Good morning, everyone. It is 9 a.m. and so the VRE Operations Board meeting will now come to order. Would the board clerk please call the roll? I'm not awake yet.
Yes, Mr. Alcorn,
Here.
Ms. Bailey,
Here.
Mr. Banks,
Here.
Ms. Bennett Parker,
Here.
Ms. Baumke,
Here.
Ms. Crystal, Ms. Franklin, Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Lawson,
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin, Ms. Shelton,
Here.
Mr. Skinner, Mr. Smith, Mr. Stork,
Here.
and Mr. Walkinshaw.
Here.
Madam Chair, we do have a quorum now.
Wonderful, thank you. As a reminder, we'll be voting by voice vote today. So please make sure to keep yourself on mute aside from when you're voting or speaking. And so first up, we have our consent agenda, which consists of the following item. Resolution 2A, finding the need to conduct the May 21st, 2021 meeting electronically, given that we find that meeting by electronic means is authorized because the nature of the current declared emergency makes it both impracticable and unsafe for the Operations Board to assemble in a single location as statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Operation Board's lawful duties. And the items on today's agenda are encompassed within the continuity of operations ordinances adopted by several member localities of the VRE to assure continued operations during the disaster posed by the public health emergency resulting from COVID-19. Also on the consent agenda is 2B, approval of the agenda, 2C, authorization to issue a request for proposals for construction manager, general contractor for the Alexandria Station Improvements Project, and 2D, authorization to issue a request of proposals for general planning consulting services. Is there a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda?
So move, Supervisor Bailey.
Second, Supervisor Shelton.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey and Ms. Shelton. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Next, we have the approval of the minutes for the April 16th, 2021 Operations Board meeting. Does anyone have any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none. Is there a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Move approval. This is Crystal.
Second, Bailey.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal and Ms. Bailey. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Welcome, everyone, and happy Friday. First, I want to congratulate Steve McIsaac on his appointment by the Commissions as General Counsel and Chief Legal Officer for VRE. Given the growing complexity of rail in Virginia and Mr. McIsaac's level of legal experience, subject matter expertise, and dedication to VRE, I know we are all excited to have him on board. We also want to thank Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton of the District of Columbia for including funding for the L'Enfant Station and Fourth Track project in a House earmark request. And we are working with Senators Warner and Kane's offices to have an earmark request for that project included on the Senate side. And then a number of meeting updates. First of all, there will not be a committee meeting after today's meeting. As a reminder, our June meeting is pushed back a week due to Juneteenth, so it will now be on June 25th. Staff is working to solidify plans for some level of a hybrid meeting in June that would include voluntary in-person participation. Board members will be notified once those plans are finalized. Going forward, if the declaration of emergency lapses at the end of June, we would need to have a quorum in person in July. So just going forward, it's going to be really imperative for board members to give definitive and timely responses to the board clerk's quorum calls in the future. Also in June, we will have a number of committee meetings. The CEO Evaluation Committee meeting is still being determined. You can see those members on the slide in front of you. And then we will have the Audit Committee meeting prior to the June 25th meeting at 8:30 a.m. and the Finance Committee meeting immediately following the June 25th meeting. And with that, I believe I will turn it over to Mr. Dalton for his CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Operations Board members and others. To start off with, rail safety was a topic of a recent information session hosted by VRE System and our System Safety and Security Administrator, Charlotte Norris, on May 10th. Charlotte helped members of Boy Scout Troop 2016 from the Chantilly area check off several requirements for the Railroading Merit Badge. The Scouts observed the arrival and departure of Train 335 at Burke Center and a fire extinguisher demonstration prior to breaking for some pizza. Our team continues to promote rail safety across the region with multiple organizations, and this is a great example of those efforts. VRE passengers and onboard train crews and staff working at our rail facilities are governed by 2 federal and 1 state mask mandate. For our passengers, the Transportation Safety Administration, or TSA, recently extended their mandate until September 13th. As guidance from CDC and other sources evolve, we are likely to see changes to these mandates, and I will be sure to pass this updated information to our passenger staff and other stakeholders. On ridership, we continue to operate at a reduced service level, or an S Schedule Plus. Overall ridership continues to increase ever so slightly compared to previous months or recent months. Average daily ridership, of course, is ticking up accordingly. We were near the 1,500 average daily rider mark in April, and we have continued to see a similar upward trend in May. On-time performance for the system, once again, was strong at 93% system-wide. And then want to report on May 10th, we announced VRE will return to full service, or our full service schedule, effective June 1st. As mentioned during the April meeting and at both commission meetings in May, we anticipate ridership to continue to increase after Memorial Day and throughout the summer, and accelerating after Labor Day as federal agencies and other employees return, or other employers reopen. Our staff, our host railroads, and contracted service providers are preparing for the return to a full service schedule. I do note that, you know, we are anticipating a few bumps as we have not operated at this level for almost 15 months, but I think those bumps should be short-lived. I will also note that upon the return to a full schedule, our efforts to promote a safe and healthy return to VRE will not stop. We will continue to market VRE as a preferred alternative for commuters in this region along the I-95 and I-66 corridors. I want to make a note, the interactive tour that you're seeing on your screen right now to the left there, it was recognized by APTA as the 2021 winner of the Best Marketing and Communications on COVID in the shoestring tactic category. I just want to thank Cindy King, our marketing administrator, for creating this very helpful interactive tour for our passengers. Okay, shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about, as a project spotlight, transforming rail in Virginia, and just kind of give a little background here. You know, the VRE system plan 2040 provides, by definition, it provides for the logical incremental expansion of VRE infrastructure and service. For the phase 2 of the system plan, transforming rail in Virginia will provide a path for VRE to increase service throughout the next decade. So I just want to share this timeline with you that reflects timing of the planned additional service VRE can add as part of the overall Transforming Rail in Virginia program. I will also note that reference to additional Manassas line trains is still subject to a separate agreement with Norfolk Southern. So just kind of walking left to right on this timeline, We of course, acquisition for all intents and purposes have happened. The next piece that's likely to be implemented after Labor Day or sometime in the fall is what we refer to as our post-acquisition schedule. And this is where VRE trains, Amtrak trains that operate within our corridor, there's some slight adjustments to our schedules. And I will say that those adjustments are very favorable to VRE trains. And so again, those are likely to be implemented sometime this fall. And of course, in that post-acquisition schedule, there are as noted below, additional round-trip trains, of course, for the Fredericksburg line, and once an agreement with Norfolk Southern is completed, there's a round-trip train there on the Manassas line. And then if you recall back in the discussion when we were going through the agreements with the rail authority or executing those agreements, we've given ourselves kind of this timeline of about 3 years in order to introduce the post-acquisition additional service, or those 2 round trips referred to below, including the phase 1 and phase 2 additional services that are noted there. I just want to say that we are currently planning, and we'll be bringing back discussion, if you will, not only for the post-acquisition additional service, but some level of plans for phase 1 and phase 2. And that, of course, will all start with our FY 2023 operating capital budget process. And of course, those specifics that support the functional areas like storage capacity, staffing, rolling stock equipment, operational funding, those types of things. We'll start incrementally filling in that information as we go along. But just for now, I just wanted to show you this timeline, as you will definitely see this again and again with details to establish the planned additional service incrementally as time goes on. So once again, just wanted to show this to you, give you a preview to it, and we will see it again. And then finally, we have been working with the staff at the City of Manassas and the Manassas Historical Society as they resume their annual Manassas Rail Festival, scheduled for Saturday, June 5th. VRE will not operate a train as we previously have, but we will provide a locomotive and a cab control car as a static display. This is a great event, and encourage all that can attend, and this is our way to keep, obviously keep VRE in people's mind's eye in the community. That is the end of my report, Madam Chair. Glad to take questions at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Dalton? Hearing none. I cannot see everyone at the same time, so don't be shy about speaking up. But hearing none, we'll move on to public comments. Public comments for this meeting were taken electronically. The public comment period opened 1 week ago today and closed at 8 a.m. this morning. At this time, the clerk will read any comments into the record.
Madam Chair, we have not received any comments.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our action items. The first is 7A, authorization to exercise a contract for delivery of lubricating oil for VRE locomotives. Mr. Dalton, will you introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're seeking authorization for the CEO to execute a contract with Cadence Petroleum Group of Ashland, Virginia, for the delivery of lubricating oil for VRE locomotives in the amount stated in the resolution, plus a contingency, for a total amount not to exceed $503,685. The contract will be for a base year with 4 one-year options, with the CEO exercising the option years at his discretion. And then just in summary, of course, the VRE locomotives, we require 4 different types of lubricating oil. And this contract will allow for the delivery of these products to our maintenance and storage facilities. The current contract for this service expires in October. Therefore, the term of the contract with Cadence Petroleum will commence upon expiration of the current contract. That is my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve Resolution 7A?
So moved, Madam Chair. Supervisor Bailey.
Is there a second?
Second, this is Crystal.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Ms. Crystal, any questions or comments on this item?
Yes, ma'am. Supervisor Shelton.
Yes, Ms. Shelton.
Rich, I have a question about on the 10%
participant
contingency.
has left the meeting.
I had thought that I really had thought that much of our petroleum products were fixed price, and apparently this one isn't. So why do we have a 10% contingency?
So, great question, Supervisor Shelton. So the price per gallon, if you will, is fixed price. Okay, and then we predict
Has
the
joined the
quantity.
meeting.
Okay, so we predict the quantity. So over time, and frankly, we're pretty consistent on that quantity. But what putting a contingency in this contract allows for the ability to adjust the contract in the event that, let's just say, for engine oil, or we've got two different types of engines or whatever. If we, for some reason, if we had a catastrophic failure or something with one of those engines, and we used additional engine oil, then there's room in this contingency to be able to account for that without having to come back to the operations board.
I understand.
That's
Thank you.
just an example.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Next item is 7B, a resolution to authorize the CEO to execute an excess facilities agreement with Rappahannock Electric Cooperative for Lou Facility Electric Service. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, this is we're seeking authorization for the CEO to execute an excess facilities agreement with Rappahannock Electric Cooperative for additional electric services, facilities necessary to accommodate the new life cycle overhaul and upgrade, or LUUP facility. So in summary, for our Rappahannock Electric Cooperative, which is the sole provider of electrical services to this facility, to provide service for the expansion of the Crossroads facility, they had to complete several upgrades to the electrical feeder lines into the facility. So I'll just briefly step through those real quick. They upgraded the overhead lines from Summit Substation, which is off of Massaponax Church Road, to Benchmark Road. They had to upgrade the underground conductors from Benchmark Road to the entrance of the VRE Crossroads facility. So in total, this was about 3.5 miles of system improvement. And this work, the cost of this work was borne by Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. From the entrance of the VRE facility, Rappahannock Electric will install 35 kV conductor and cable meters, or a meter, transformers, sectionalizing cabinets, and other associated equipment. And this cost would be borne by VRE. The agreement, the proposed agreement, has a one-time charge of $264,780.04 to be assessed, along with a monthly charge of $2,171.21 as long as the facilities are needed. So essentially, Rappahannock Electric will come in, put these excess facilities in. They will still essentially own the facilities, and as long as we need them, we will, pay that monthly fee. And again, the increase in the demand for electric power at Crossroads, primarily due to the additional storage tracks and the equipment that will be in the LUUP facility, makes the need for excess electrical facilities necessary. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve Resolution 7B?
So moved, Madam Chair. Supervisor Bailey.
Second, Supervisor Bomke.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey, Ms. Bonke. Any questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, Ms. Bailey.
Just point of clarity, Rich, this is maintenance only, right? This is not upgrade or anything, this is maintenance, correct?
So this is what Rappahannock Electric will be doing is upgrading the feeder service into the Crossroads facility, and that's additional cabling and stuff like that, and adding transformers. Then, of course, to the maintenance side, yes, Rappahannock Electric will continue to maintain, their facilities, so long as we don't go out there and dig a hole and, puncture their facilities, if you will. That obviously will be some cost borne by us, but yeah, they'll continue to maintain it. But this also includes upgrading the facilities as well.
Wonderful. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is 7C, a resolution to recommend the Commission's authorized VRE enter into a right-of-way easement agreement with Rappahannock Electric Cooperatives for Lou Facility Electric Service. Mr. Dalton.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just say this is a companion item to 7B, and I'll just say up front that authorization for 7B was only needed by the operations board. And of course, there's a companion right of entry or authorization for a right of entry easement agreement with Rappahannock Electric for this project. And of course, that has to go to the commissions. And again, I will say right up front that even though the operations board has approved 7B, we will not execute an agreement with Rappahannock Electric until this easement agreement has gone to the commissions in a couple of weeks. So I'll just put that out there up front. But again, this is an easement agreement or proposed easement agreement for the electric utility easement as identified in 7B. And of course, this is necessary to give Rappahannock Electric the ability to place their underground equipment and an easement or access not only to the underground equipment or the underground lines, but even those transformers and other equipment that they end up installing on our facility. There is a diagram and some of the information that we provided, but it's essentially the easement's about 15 feet wide, a little bit less than 2,000 feet, and it runs through a portion of the lands that are currently owned by both commissions at this facility. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve Resolution 7C?
So move, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? Was that Mr. Smith?
Ralph Smith,
Okay.
second.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Mr. Smith, any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is 7D, a resolution to recommend the Commission's authorize the CEO to execute an amendment for the first option period for the contract for maintenance services for commuter rail and the first year of the first option period. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're seeking a recommendation from the Operations Board to the Commissions to authorize the CEO to amend the contract for maintenance services for commuter rail with Keolis by first approving the first 5-year option period and then approving up to the amount stated in the resolution for the first option period for a total contract value not to exceed $48,901,626 through June 30th, 2022, or effectively for fiscal year 22. So this action will, of course, first authorize the award of the first of 2 5-year option periods. And just wanted to take a moment here, since we are asking for an award of that option period, just to kind of go back and reflect over a little bit of the previous 5 years and some of the accomplishments of Keolis. I'll just say that Keolis has been a collaborative partner and maintains a strong commitment to the safety of our passengers, employees, and third parties. Keolis has created a positive safety culture that has resulted in no significant accidents or injuries during the life of this contract. I'll also say that Keolis has done well adapting to the service and process changes that were driven by the current COVID-19 pandemic. Keolis's mechanical team has provided superior maintenance and servicing of our trains. In our rider surveys, both equipment condition and cleanliness get the highest of all survey scores, typically ranging consistently within the 90 to 95 percentile. Keolis's mechanical team has also worked closely with VRE staff in the development and implementation of our lifecycle maintenance program, and has positioned itself to perform capital improvement projects for VRE that previously required use of third-party vendors. For example, they recently managed the installation of our automated passenger counters on the entire VRE fleet and completed the task on budget and ahead of schedule. Similarly, in 2019, Keolis assisted VRE in the implementation of positive train control. Keolis's personnel have developed a deep expertise in this technology and play a significant role in the success of the PTC system functionality. And finally, Keolis demonstrates continuous improvement in its management approach and has maintained ISO 9001 certification since 2015. And then, Madam Chair, this action, as stated previously, will also amend the contract authorization for FY22, as stated in the resolution. That's my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve Resolution 7D?
Humke, move for approval.
Second, Bailey.
Thank you, Ms. Bomke and Ms. Bailey. Are there questions or comments on this item?
Madam
Yes.
Chair, just one. This is Vice Chair Crystal. Good morning.
Good morning.
Let me first say I'm really delighted with Keolis's performance. I think our CEO described well what an asset they've been to the rail system, and I think for so many of our riders, they don't distinguish actually between Keolis and VRE. This Keolis stuff they see are VRE to them. So I ask this really only as a process question, not to indicate any kind of dissatisfaction. But oftentimes we'll see, both for this item and the following, we'll see other bidders, some highlights about the other bid process. And so I wondered if, not seeing that in the board materials, if that's something the CEO could speak to. Are there others who can operate at this scale that VRE provides? Or that VRE is in need of both maintenance and then service provision for commuter rail? And if so, what did the other bids look like?
Thank you, Chair Crystal. With this contract and you referenced the operating contract, we conducted no solicitation. There are no bidders. We have established contracts with Keolis for both of the maintenance services and the operating services. And just like the operating services, that contract had, it was a base year of 5 years with 2 5-year options. And what we're recommending here with the maintenance services agreement is that we exercise that first 5-year option in lieu of doing a competitive solicitation. And frankly, because we're happy with their services for all of the reasons, or I summarized the reasons. I could probably spend a little bit more time on all of the reasons, but so just to make sure, that's the action that we're asking for here on this one. The next one is a little bit more simpler than that.
Got it. Okay. And I'm looking back now again at the meeting materials, and I'm realizing I misread that competitive solicitation was actually back in 2015 at the time of the first award. Okay. So I'm better understanding now. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I did not see who that was.
I'm sorry, this is Supervisor Shelton.
Yes, Ms. Shelton.
First of all, Rich, I really like the ISO 9001 because I like evidence-based decision-making. So that makes me really happy. The real question I have has to do with the contract. What do we do about catastrophic failures? Are they paid for with this bucket of money, or is it within some other area?
Great question, Supervisor Shelton. So catastrophic failures, what Keolis provides to VRE, you can look at it primarily from a labor perspective. In other words, they provide the technical expertise, the technical density that we need to maintain the equipment. And of course, if we had a catastrophic failure, and likely through a task order process or something, Keolis would help us with that. In other words, they would provide technical expertise. On the material side, all of the material for the maintenance services is provided directly from VRE. In other words, as you know, Supervisor Shelton, we have our own warehouse staff, and we manage all of those materials. We maintain a stock of spares, running spares, that type of stuff. So in terms of catastrophic failures, I mean, at the end of the day, from a material and a labor standpoint, we would absorb that, if you will, but frankly, we spend more of our time focused on the preventive side and understanding that catastrophic failures do happen. But we've been very fortunate, and Keolis is a big part of why we are fortunate, because of our very, very rigorous preventive maintenance side. And I do also want to make a comment to your comment about the ISO 9001 certification. It is very rare in our industry to have a provider such as Keolis, both on the mechanical or the maintenance side and the operating side, to hold an ISO 9001 certification. So that lets you know how important this is, not only to VRE, but Keolis as well, to have a very prescriptive management process from a quality side. So again, it's rare in our industry, but Keolis is very dedicated to that.
I didn't realize that. And I do want to apologize because now I feel like we should be knocking on wood somewhere. So anyway, thank you very much for your explanation.
And Supervisor Shelton, I did. You just couldn't see my hands.
Are there other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Resolution 7D, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is 7E, a resolution to recommend the Commission's authorize the CEO to execute an amendment for the second year of the second option period of the contract for operating services for commuter rail. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're seeking Operations Board recommendation to the Commissions to authorize the CEO to amend the contract for operating services for commuter rail with Keolis by approving an amount stated in the resolution for the second year of the second option period for a total contract value not to exceed $212,790,557 through June 30th of 2022. So this action will just simply authorize the contracted services for the management, supervision, and of certified locomotive engineers and conductors to operate VRE commuter rail trains in FY 2022. That is my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve Resolution 7E?
So move, Supervisor Bailey.
Second, Crystal.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey and Ms. Crystal. Are there questions or comments on this item?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Stork.
Mr. Stork.
Yeah, my question kind of really goes to both motions, but it's in the broader ones, which is how have the COVID, reductions affected our compensation to them, and are there any other issues that we should be aware of that that the contract needs to be modified or addressed, something that would, I mean, again, given what the shock and surprise that COVID has had on all of us, obviously it's affected our relationship in those contractual relationships. Can you just give us at least an overview, Rich, of what that's meant and how that's transpired, and is there any kind of adjustments that are being made in these agreements that you're recommending because of that?
Thank you, Supervisor Stork. I'll just say, maybe just kind of taking a look at the last year as a good example. So, when we went into when we started into the pandemic and stuff, and as you may recall, we immediately went to a reduced level of service, and of course, as we have been operating the last year, and particularly for the first 6, 8, maybe even 10 months, as we were in the pandemic, under that reduced level of service, in order to, well, there was some discussion early on about potentially making some modifications to the contract, just simply because of the lower level of service. But what we found out real quick is that in order to maintain that level of service, even at a reduced service level, we needed all hands on deck, simply because, particularly from a train crew perspective, because we frequently had situations where, out of an abundance of caution, train crews were being quarantined, the entire train crew, and in some cases, multiple train crews for long periods of time. So I'm just saying that, and that applies also on the mechanical side of the maintenance side. And so that's why we have continued to essentially, we didn't amend the contracts. We continued to pay for, essentially a full service environment, and primarily because of having the ability to establish and maintain a very liberal leave policy within those workers. Because at some point, or early on too, we basically said, hey, if any of you wake up in the morning and you got a temperature or something like that, stay home. We just want you to, out of an abundance of caution. So I wanted to, my initial reaction and response, I want to get that piece out there. And of course, under the mechanical side, of course, we enhanced, we went through a lot of process to enhance our cleaning processes, cleaning and disinfecting processes, and just some of the protocols, processes that we have out at the maintenance and storage facilities, that did not materially, or has not materially affected the contracts. In fact, there's not much change, even though we plan to maintain, if you will, going forward, a lot of those cleaning and disinfecting processes moving forward, because we found that there are, from a process standpoint, we found some efficiencies there, and combined with the type of chemicals and stuff that we use. So on the onboard train crew side, there's really nothing there, or nothing changed. The contract for the operating side is, as long as we're operating X amount of trains, and each train needs X amount of people to staff that, and to operate that, and of course the subsequent management, that seems fairly simple. And as I mentioned before, we'll be going back to a full schedule June 1st, which means in FY22 likely that we'll spend the entire fiscal year in a full service or a full schedule operation. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Supervisor Stork, but that's my initial reaction to your question.
I appreciate that. Somewhat it does. Probably two things. One is obviously the reduction in the number of trains, and that, has that not resulted in any differences in the compensation that's paid to Keolis?
Supervisor Stork, the short answer is no. Again, on the train operations side, just for example, we at a reduced level of service, on the Fredericksburg side, and it's at our S plus schedule, we operate on a daily basis, we operate 5 concests, 5 train concests, right? And we work up a spare concess, which makes 6. On a full schedule, there are 8 concests. So from the perspective on the operating side, you can look at it from, there are 2 train sets of crews, right? So it's 2 engineers and 4 to 5, maybe 6 conductors. Those folks then became very valuable, if you will, as train crews would have to quarantine for extended periods of time, up to 2 weeks in some cases. Those folks could come in and actually backfill those positions and continue to operate trains at this reduced service level. So that's an example on the operating side. On the maintenance side, using that same example, so we, at the reduced level of service, so there's 2 train concests that we didn't have to work up on a daily basis, but we still maintain the entire fleet. I still rotated fleet. In other words, I still balance mileage. I still balance time on all of that equipment. And to some degree, what was, we were able to get, accelerate some of the programs, the projects that we had already going on with Keolis. We mentioned the automated passenger counters. Those programs were able to get, completed sooner rather than later, particularly on the cleaning side. In that example, initially, we were doing a lot of extra cleaning very manually, if you will, until we were able to get some processes in later in the calendar year to reduce some of that. So again, a lot of those things combined did not necessitate, reducing the labor hours, if you will, because these are labor hour type contracts. Did not necessitate reducing those labor hours. And again,
do you see a similar kind of, if we added, a couple runs, do you see a similar kind of not likely to have a major cost?
Well,
because of that as well. I mean, given that we can go down a couple, does we have the same flexibility because there's a fixed cost? Is what I hear you saying. There's fixed costs associated with this, and
sure. Going up, as we add additional service, and I'll give you the scenario where if we at some point, and this is likely to be more in the phase 2, if you recall that timeline I shared, in that phase 2 category where we can add some reverse flow or reverse type trains, that would essentially, it would put train crews on the clock longer, but not necessarily mean we have to add additional, personnel per se. But as we add additional trains, that are just basically one round trip, it's likely that we add, we'll have to add some labor, individual, personnel, engineer certified, conductor certified to those trains. So it'll be a mixed bag of things, Supervisor Stork, moving forward.
Okay. And last question is, do we know if Keolis got any PPP money?
Do we, I'm sorry, can you just ask that question?
Yes, I probably said it. Do we know if Keolis got any PPP money, the protection money, the money that was available to smaller or actually businesses for the differential between what the employees that they laid off versus the ones that they able to maintain, and that kind of difference? I'm, as a smaller employer like I am, I was able to apply for and get the PPP money through the SBA. Do you know if that's something that they were able to access, or did they have any payments that they received from the federal government?
So let me just say this: Keolis Rail Services Virginia, as far as it's in my most recent discussions with that leadership team, did not receive any direct federal or any type of assistance. And I just want to make that clarification because Keolis is an international company, and And but Keolis Rail Virginia basically, you know, by way of VRE maintaining the contract levels that we have maintained, and the other key to that is and they did not furlough any personnel. There was no personnel furloughed, which of course plays into the federal assistance that we received through the 3 federal relief packages. Yeah, that's my answer to your question.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Resolution 7E, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is 7F, a resolution to recommend the Commission's authorize the CEO execute a contract for new rail cars. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, 7F, this is, we're asking the Operations Board to recommend the Commission's authorize the CEO to execute a contract with Alstom Transportation, Inc. in the amount stated in the resolution, plus a contingency for a total amount not to exceed $84,624,563. And backed by popular demand, we will be bringing up that video that we showed at the last Operations Board meeting. And here you go.
Multi-level sets the stage for a new era in VRE commuter rail service. Passengers will enjoy an enhanced travel experience with multiple side doors on each car to improve passenger flow and reduce dwell times at stations. Level boarding that promotes accessibility for all passengers while maintaining interoperability with the existing fleet. The Cooperative multi-level boasts an improved stainless steel car body with a structural design meeting the latest FRA crashworthiness standards for the safest ride. Easy access to aid removal of components such as brake discs and HVAC units shorten maintenance durations. The new cab cars will feature a new expandable design for the operator. Enhanced diagnostics and connected systems mean better fleet maintenance, operations, reliability, and availability. The choices of materials, treatments, and touchless features promote easier cleaning and a sanitary interior for healthy journeys, reassuring passengers, and enhancing satisfaction. The interior offers fluidity and efficiency. Level boarding and wide vestibules promote access for persons with reduced mobility and passenger exchange. Bicycle and luggage areas enable intermobility, which can help attract new passengers and promote sustainable mobility. For passenger safety and security, centered lower level to mid-level stairs improve sight lines for VRE personnel, and CCTV reassures passengers of their safety. Passenger flows for boarding and circulation throughout the cars offer a welcoming and modern feel for VRE customers. Lifts on each car will assist persons with mobility assistance devices. ADA, fully accessible restrooms, and dedicated seating areas enhance accessibility and inclusivity for VRE passengers. The passenger is at the heart of the design. From more personal space to modern filtration systems for air quality and circulation to the latest cybersecurity technology. Features that ensure the safety and integrity of the entire train, reassure passengers, and provide a comforting environment. The open interior is flooded with natural light via large windows so riders can look outside and enjoy the passing landscape and views. The Cooperative multi-level will bring a new and improved experience for commuters between Northern Virginia and Washington, D.C.
Okay, so let me just in quick summary. So this resolution well, again, we'll recommend to the commissions that we execute a contract for the design, manufacture, and deliver of a base order of 21 new multi-level passenger cars. These are specifically trailer cars with restrooms with a total of 148 seats per car. The delivery of the 21 rail cars is anticipated to take between about 36 to 48 months from the time we give notice to proceed. And the rail cars will have a 6-year warranty. Our previous rail car warranties over time have only been 2-year warranties. So this will have a 6-year warranty starting on the date the rail car is placed into revenue service. And then also proposing the contract, or also the proposed contract will have the ability for VRE to purchase additional rail cars. There are 44 trailer cars and 4 cab control cars available to VRE as options. And I'll just point out that those become advantageous. And again, if you think back to that timeline I showed you previously, as we get into phase 1, maybe even phase 2 of transforming rail in Virginia, specifically the planned additional services. If we need more rail cars, we are likely to need more rail cars. We will, depending on the timing, of course, of those decisions, we will be able to pull off of this contract as well. So that is my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Baumke, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I may have missed this, but if you could please explain, Rich, how are we paying for these cars?
So in a broad stroke, and so the primary funding source for these cars is through smart scale funding, and those would be for again, take the 21 cars. There's 11 cars that were part of a Fredericksburg line capacity expansion project application for smart scale. So 11 of those cars would be funded through smart scale, or a portion of them funded through smart scale. On the other 10 through a similar Manassas line capacity improvement program, and this goes back over a couple of years ago. There is funding available for those, or for part of those cars, through the I-66 outside the Beltway concessionaire payment. And then we do have some other federal sources, our federal formula funding that would be on those, that would make up the balance of those the funds needed to procure those cars. We can get into a little bit more detail if that's what you're looking at, but that's, in summary, that's where the funding's coming from.
Okay, so if I heard you correctly, we aren't financing any of these. The smart scale, I would assume then that there's no match money required for those. That was just part of the smart scale program, and the rest is federal and other monies, but nothing that's going to be financed.
Nothing that is going to be financed. That is correct.
All right, thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, one other question.
Sorry, Ms. Crystal.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you as well for the sort of procurement history in the board report that you provided for us. And so, is it right that all of our rail, at this point, we've replaced everything that wasn't a Sumitomo? Those are all. That's the entire fleet is otherwise created by Sumitomo.
So, yes, yes, we have right now.
I was just going to ask: is there anything we should know about? I guess interoperability now that we're going to have a new manufacturer. Any kind of nuances there that we should be aware of about how the cars, particularly some of these are trailer cars, will work with the rest of our fleet, or is that actually pretty common to have different rail cars by different manufacturers operating as part of the same fleet?
Well, let me just start with, we currently have 100 Gallery 4 style cars manufactured by Sumitomo, and it's y'all, in this business, you always push to have a standardized fleet, right? So And we've had a standardized fleet, for several years, but, those good times shall soon pass as well. But because frankly, Sumitomo's not manufacturing that car, as some of you know. So I just want to start there. It is not uncommon to have other manufacturers, and mix passenger rail cars within a consist from different manufacturers. The key is that interoperability or that compatibility piece. So the good thing here, and this was one of the reasons why we recommended that we do a joint procurement with Chicago Metro, is because they too operate those same Gallery 4 type cars that we have. So bringing a manufacturer together that, we're ordering 21 cars here, but Metro is ordering 200, right? And they have options, for several hundred more. And so, even a better situation, if you will, to design for that compatibility piece. But yeah, other than they're going to look a little different on the outside, obviously be configured slightly different on the inside, but rest assured, when you see this rail car, and you go inside this rail car, you will know you are on a VRE train.
I think my question was, thank you. My question was also just sort of about the operations of the train, right? Obviously, I think sometimes we are kind of this little commuter rail system that could operating off of scraps, right? We run on freight tracks with different rail cars. And so I think I was sort of interested from an operations perspective. Is there anything about the interoperability that will change, or it's just sort of a matter of adjusting all of those operations practices to bring this new manufacturer of rail cars online?
For Chair Crystal, for the most part, any changes will be transparent, to the passenger. I will say one change that we deem as an enhancement of these rail cars will have from a side loading perspective, instead of having one single door for boarding and alighting, there will be two. And we believe, well, more than believe, this will help us minimize our dwell times. It will help with the fact of, where you have passengers that have to come from opposite ends of the cars to the center of the car. So, down to the smallest things like, reducing slip, trips, and falls, reducing those types of things that happen. I mean, obviously, if you can reduce the number of steps that a passenger has to take to get off of the train. The other thing that on that respect is that these will be level boarding on a low level platform. In other words, you will not have to step down steps out the side loading doors onto the platform. You'll actually be able to just walk out at a relatively same level, plus or minus a few inches or less than a couple of inches, and just walk out onto the platform. So there's a lot of those types of enhancements with these rail cars. But again, from an operation standpoint, the braking rates of these cars will be compatible with the existing braking rates of our current cars. The communication systems, everything will be tied together and be somewhat transparent. We're actually looking at some of the enhancements that will be coming on these cars to, particularly from a communications and electronic standpoint, to likely go back to our existing fleet, our 100 Gallery 4 cars, and potentially upgrade them as we go through different levels of our life cycle maintenance program. In other words, instead of replacing an in-kind communication system on board a Gallery 4 car, we're likely to replace it with a updated, enhanced electronic form from this newer rail car. So Hope that answers your question.
It does.
If not,
It does. That was really helpful. Thank
I
you.
can keep going for hours, as you know, on this topic.
No, I love that. I think those were a couple of excellent for instances. And the point too about the level boarding is wonderful. I mean, that's so important, not only for getting people on and off the train quicker, right? Reducing dwell times helps us meet our destinations more predictably, and it's also great for accessibility for our passengers who may need mobility devices, and something that's especially important in our stop in Arlington, where people are connecting to a very urban environment and getting onto their next destination. If they'd like to bring their bikes with them, which I know the new cars will have room for that storage, the level boarding helps make that non-disruptive too, to get that on and off. So really excited to hear all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And good point there. I'll just add that from a, our current Gallery 4 fleet, as we bring bicycles on board, we do that, and we do that under a full service. We do that on select trains. We'll be able to bring bicycles on board these cars on any train because they have separate storage for them, and they're not actually taking away seating capacity from passengers. So again, just several enhancements with this new design car.
Thank you. Following up on that question and sort of the issue of platform heights and rail car door level, I know that's been cited as a challenge in run-through service, and I just wanted to confirm that going forward, it seems like these would be potentially compatible with that goal. Is that correct?
So let me just say this: our current and our proposed new rail cars will not be the limiting factor for run-through service into Maryland on the Mark, Camden, and Brunswick lines. In other words, those two lines operate in a similar environment, such as, they have to be interoperable with freight trains. If there was a desire at some point in the future to operate VRE trains through onto the Penn line, that's a whole different topic and takes a whole different set of equipment.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions or comments?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Bailey.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to, first of all, thank Ms. Crystal for her question that really opened my mind, being a new member to the board. That I'm not so new anymore, but that really opened my mind, the discussion that she was having with Mr. Dalton, just to help me to understand the fleet. So I appreciate that, and the details, Mr. Dalton, that you offered. And appreciate also when you talk about safety, your point that you made about safety, that's real important. Sometimes we have to rethink the budget, rethink the fleet when we talk about safety. So that really enlightens my mindset in terms of support of what you're trying to do. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Lawson.
Thank you. Rich, I have a few questions, and I apologize I didn't ask any of them yesterday when we were on the phone. I hadn't looked at the agenda yet. A couple initial questions. How much money did the VRE receive for the concessionaire payment?
You're gonna have to stand by. I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay, because I know that we're using some concessionaire payment for broad run expansion, and so I'm
Rich.
thinking. Go ahead.
Yes, Mark.
Mark, yes. Good morning, board members. Approximately 28 million for the Manassas line cars out of the I-66 concession payment.
Okay, so Mark, that was specifically earmarked for this project or for this purchase?
Yes, that's right. The total amount of concession money that we got was obviously much larger for Broad Run
Right.
and for Manassas, but yes, 28.1 million for the rail cars.
Okay, and do you have just out of curiosity, do you have the total amount from concessionaire for VRE?
Off the top of my head, I believe it was about 128 million, but I would have to go back and check that one for you.
So when is the last time that we purchased new rail cars like the Gallery 4 that you referenced? How young or old is our most recent purchase?
So our most thank you, Supervisor Lawson. Our most recent purchase was back in we received cars back in 2018, 2019, or excuse me, 2017, 2018. And that was the last tranche of cars that we received. I think that was the tail end of about 29 cars. And if you recall, those some of those were for expansion, but a lot of those cars, the recent purchases that we've done were to replace we refer to as the legacy cars, and from which we were able to standardize our fleet of 100. So overall, out of those 100 cars, we do have some cab control cars that were manufactured in 2006, and some, and then of course, you know, there were cars manufactured and delivered over time over this last decade, and we have some of those cars that are as young as 2017, 2018.
Okay, so if the board, hypothetically were to vote against this purchase, would that 28 million be directed elsewhere, or specifically somewhere on the Manassas line, broad run expansion? Like, what would we do if, in the event that the majority of the ops board did not want this purchase?
Well, frankly, Supervisor Lawson, it has more tangible effects than that. I mentioned before the Manassas line capacity expansion project and the Fredericksburg capacity expansion project. Frankly, the linchpin of those two projects or program of projects are rail cars. And subsequently, the reason why we were able to get funding for other smart scale funding and funding through the concessionaire payment for other projects as well. So I would say it wouldn't be something as simple as being able to take that funding and moving it somewhere else, because it would be, the whole purpose of these capacity expansion programs are simply to add seats.
Okay. So it's not as simple as, because I guess I'm just thinking about this with the gap in funding for the broad run expansion. Not that I'm looking to turn this, agenda item upside down, but okay. And so when we received the concessionaire payment a while back, this was specifically earmarked for those 11 cars on the Manassas line.
That was part of the concessionaire payment or the concessionaire funding, but it also included funding for broad run expansion. It included funding for the Manassas Park parking garage. But again, it's all about adding seats, and that's sort of the underlying theme of all these capacity expansion funding programs, is to be able to add seats. And if we're not going to order cars, then we're going to have to have a different discussion here.
Yeah, I get that. I'm just, as you know from our conversation yesterday, I'm really struggling with, we need to put people in the seats. That's why I'm really struggling with this. All right, I'm done, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson. Are there other questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Bomke again.
Yes,
So
Ms.
in
Bomke.
light of some of the questions that have been raised, I guess if I'm hearing what Ms. Lawson is saying, she'd like to get people in these seats, as we all would. My only question would be, are we premature in adding these cars in light of the fact that we really don't know what our ridership is going to look like in light of the pandemic? As you know, we all continue to hear stories of people that are federal employees. Some are gone back full time, some aren't. I mean, we really don't know what that's going to look like. So I just asked the question, are we being premature, or do you not feel that way, Rich?
I will just say I completely get what you're saying. And obviously, we find ourselves right now in a position where, we do have what we're doing here is executing our system plan, right? And in the midst of us executing our system plan, we've, been unfortunate to be, engulfed in this pandemic for the last now 15 months or so. Prior to the pandemic, for the most part, standing room only on our trains. I believe moving forward, it's not a matter of when ridership will come back, or it's not a matter of if ridership will come back. It's a matter of when. And to some degree, I believe ridership patterns are going to change a little bit, such that more frequency of VRE trains are going to be important, right? And so, as I mentioned before, or showed before, that timeline for adding planned additional service, I think will actually play in quite nicely with this. As it relates to, a potential for deferring an action like this or whatever. Yeah, I mean, we looked at it as well, on our, internally from a recommendation standpoint. I will say that at this point, well, from a technical side or from a process side, if we're sitting on a best and final offer from the manufacturer, and that's going to expire here, I believe, next month. And so, we may just simply be in a position, if that's the direction the board wants to go, is to just have to go out and resolicit this purchase again, which would put us back here in a couple of years. But I'll also say this, that moving forward with this procurement, and let's just say hypothetically, in 3 or 4 years, we still find ourselves in a position where 100 rail cars or some number thereof is still the right number. Well, remember, I have rail cars that were purchased, back in 2005, 2006, 2007, that will continue to age. And so, I would actually be looking at something more in lines of still bringing in these more enhanced new technology rail cars, and looking at doing something else with the existing Gallery 4 cars. And I haven't analyzed this, honestly, Supervisor Baumke, but my reaction to what you're saying is, we could possibly do something like that. But, well, anyway, I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your perspective.
Are there other questions or comments?
Madam Chair, did we have a motion and a second?
We did not. So
Okay.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move, Supervisor Bailey.
Second, Crystal.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey and Ms. Crystal. All those in favor of approving Resolution 7F, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Please say nay.
Madam Chair, this is Lawson. I'm opposed.
Noted, Ms. Lawson.
Madam Chair, this is Mr. Banks with 1 no.
Mr. Banks. Any other opposition? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next item is Resolution 7G to refer the amended FY22 operating budget to the commissions. Mr. Dalton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This 7G is the Operations Board is asked to adopt the amended FY 2022 VRE operating budget and to refer the amended budget to the commissions for their consideration and approval. So just as a quick background, after the FY 2022 operating and capital budgets were adopted, the federal government approved additional pandemic relief funds for transit providers And VRE is incorporating a portion of these revenues into the FY 2022 operating budget. The amended budget reflects the discussions over the past couple of months regarding a reduction in jurisdictional subsidy contributions and not seeking track access fee reimbursements from the Commonwealth in FY 2022. The total planned expenditures for the FY 2022 budget are unchanged, and the FY 2022 budget remains balanced. Just wanted to, I know you've seen this chart in a couple of different formats, including a memo format. Just wanted to note here that if approved, of course, VRE staff will be in contact with jurisdictional staff directly to inform them of the change ahead of the anticipated payments by the jurisdictions on or about July 1st. That is my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to approve Resolution 7G?
So move, Supervisor
Alcorn, I would so move.
Second, Supervisor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Alcorn and Ms. Bailey. Are there questions or comments on this item? Noting that we have discussed it at the past two meetings. I don't hear anything. Ms. Lawson, do you have your hand raised? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Resolution 7G, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Turn it over to Mr. Dalton for the information items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's do 8A first. This is the spending authority report, and I can go into whatever level of detail that you want, but let me just kind of step down these briefly. Under the spending authority report, we did amend a task order for monitoring and support for positive train control. We issued a task order to conduct a railcar air filtration system analysis. We also executed a contract to acquire a total of 400 equalizer seats, and this is maintenance material for our passenger rail cars. We issued a sole source purchase order to acquire new fuel pumps for VRE's locomotives. We executed a relocation agreement with CenturyLink to relocate telecommunications facilities to accomplish construction at the Quantico Station Improvement Project. We issued a task order to PFM Financial Advisors for a one-year subscription to allow for continued use of the scenario financial modeling platform. We also issued a blanket purchase order to ADT to provide on-call maintenance and repair services for existing security camera equipment. So I think, if nothing else, you could see through the previous action items and even the spending authority report, we're hitting just about all different aspects of the VRE organization with a lot of those items. So any questions on 8A? Okay, moving on to 8B. So this is an information item, and let me just start. We're bringing to you, there's a required two-step process anytime that we amend, edit, or change our bylaws. And so this is the first step in that process. We brought to you recommended changes to the bylaws, and part of that is also incorporating an electronic participation policy. And so a red line version of the bylaws and a draft of the Operations Board electronic participation policy was attached to your online board package. So let me just kind of highlight these recommended changes. One change is updating language relevant to the changes in state law having to do with electronic meetings. And then changing the month the Operations Board does not meet from July to August. As you recall, for several years, we've been doing that when we present the upcoming calendar year board calendar to you. So this will essentially codify that in the bylaws. And then the other change is updating the weighted vote language to include the change giving the Commonwealth's vote the same weight as the jurisdiction with the highest subsidy. And of course, this was a change in the master agreement back in 2014. We just never updated that in the bylaws. So let me just kind of go down a couple of things, unless anybody has any specific questions other than the electronic participation policy topic first. Okay, I just wanted to just kind of briefly go over the electronic participation policy document, and essentially it's a very thorough document, I will say. And so what we're recommending there is that we establish in the document from a participation policy standpoint, and it's simply is members who are unable to attend the meeting due to a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents a member's physical attendance, or a family member's medical condition that requires a member to provide care for such family members, thereby preventing the member's physical attendance. And you'll note that some of this is in the language that the General Assembly passed. And of course, members who are unable to attend a meeting due to a personal matter. And then it goes on to describe, basically some limitations to that, or potential limitations to the number of times that can occur. And then of course, the policy addresses moving forward how to handle electronic meetings when the governor declares a state of emergency. Again, the electronic policy goes on to identify more of the procedural requirements and guidelines, and including, how a quorum is determined and the process for notification of the need to participate in a meeting remotely. So again, this is a two-step process. We wanted to make the proposed revisions available to you. Just wanted to summarize them real quick. I'll encourage some discussion here, encourage any level of discussion between now and of course, or I should say one-on-one type discussion between now and June, and we'll bring this back to you as an action item in June. So with that, Madam Chair, let me toss back over to you to facilitate any questions from board members, etc.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I do have something else to add, but want to stop here first.
Madam Chair, this is Gary.
Yes, Mr. Skinner.
Thank you. On the July moving to August, that would put us in the same month that PRTC does not have a meeting. Rich, is that correct?
That is correct, Supervisor Skinner. And as you know, we've done that for the last couple of years, but we've never reflected that exactly in our bylaws. We've actually got separate authorization from the board at our January meeting. So that that normalizes or matches up. No August meeting for VRE Operations Board, and that's consistent with others in the region.
Thank you. Just clarifying.
Other questions or comments on this?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Bailey.
just want to thank Mr. Dahlin for bringing this to the fore, because it's good for the consistency for all boards to do so and to bring us back up to speed in the future for what's going on as it relates to COVID. So thank you for making the change immediately. I can support it.
I do want to flag for everyone. So the FOIA Council Meeting Subcommittee is going to be meeting next Wednesday at 1 p.m. This is the committee that ultimately studied individual electronic participation and granted some additional flexibility, or recommended to the General Assembly additional flexibility that passed last year, part of which is incorporated in these changes. They indicated last year that they would continue studying electronic meetings. I think VRE and other regional bodies and other individuals had advocated for looking at additional flexibility outside of a declared emergency for electronic meetings, specifically for regional bodies like ourselves, recognizing that we have members from 9 different jurisdictions, and that, as we saw last month, our finance committee meeting had to be rescheduled given that our meeting ran over, and that having the ability to have our committees or our full body meet electronically would in certain instances be helpful. I certainly don't think we should only be meeting electronically, but I think, again, flexibility, now that we have all used this technology and are really familiar with it, can be helpful to our purposes going forward. It didn't look like on the agenda that was something they were going to be discussing. The 2 things on their agenda, one I don't think is terribly relevant to our purposes, but there is a bill by Delegate Murphy that would increase the number of what constitutes a meeting, would be go from 3 members to 4. But then the other thing that I think is of interest to this body is whether or not all votes in an electronic meeting should be taken by roll call. And I know when I met with all of you in January, that was something that was requested that we switch to a voice vote where practicable. And so we now do that for everything except going into a closed session. So I wanted to sort of flag that for everyone, open that up for any questions or conversations. I would be inclined to allow or advocate for us to continue what we've been doing, and then to potentially encourage the committee to look at additional flexibility outside of declared emergencies, especially for our committees, but wanted to open that up for other thoughts or questions.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Crystal.
I would be supportive of continuing to push forward. I certainly want to thank you in particular for your leadership among a number of regional bodies in getting us thus far. Just to, not immediately relevant to VRE, but just to share something in my home jurisdiction that I think there's a lot of interest in if it resonates with others, as we start to think about, is there a package we want to push for of further amendments? One of the ones that we hear from a lot in our community is that a lot of our appointed boards are very disappointed to have to go back to meet exclusively in person because they've seen really significant increases in participation, both in their public comment, but also who can participate as an appointed board member during the pandemic, and are loath to lose that entirely. So as I think about, where we're likely to head in my jurisdiction, potentially with some advocacy, I think that might be one area. And I think our chair has highlighted a few that could be of significant interest to us as a regional body too. So I share all of that to say I think it's worth working towards in our legislative agenda, which will be upon us before we know it, even though it feels like we just finished the 2021 session. And I think, to the extent VRE wants to be part of a broader coalition, I think that was effective last year, and I would support doing so again in 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. And I do think the language we adopted as part of our legislative package last year for VRE was pretty broad and would allow us to certainly advocate for those changes.
Madam Chair.
Yes, I did not see who that was. Oh, Ms. Bailey.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to say ditto to Ms. Crystal's comments and your leadership in this endeavor. I think it was forward thinking. And the meetings certainly have been much more productive across regionally, in terms of time constraints, in terms of driving and transportation and all that, and we're just in a different space and time right now in terms of how we are conducting business. And so in order for the business to go forward, I would certainly be willing to entertain recommendations from our board in support of our board in terms of the productivity and the work that we still need to get done. And so just ditto to Ms. Crystal's comments, and as we go forward, let's think of a more creative and opportunistic way of conducting business.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Any other comments or questions?
Roger Stork.
Yes, Mr. Stork.
I want to echo the comments that have been made. I think that's clearly part of what we should be advocating, and I'll be taking those same kind of advocacies to the Fairfax board as well. But I just want to add my voice to that. Thanks.
Thank you. So my understanding is, Mr. Dalton, this will come back to us at the next meeting, so we don't need to take any action right now, but ask again if there's any other questions or comments. If not, we can move forward.
That is correct, Madam Chair, and I'll just encourage anybody that as you go through this, and to your point, as other things evolve or whatever, just feel free to reach out directly to staff with any comments or anything like that. That way we can make sure we capture those for the broader discussion or another discussion at the June meeting as well, to make sure everybody gets their thoughts and their discussion points heard. Thank you.
Unless anyone has any other comments or questions, we'll move on to board members' time. Hearing none. Although this is actually, instead of doing a roll call, we'll also just throw it open and see if anyone has anything else to add. Hearing none, I will note that I think next Thursday is Celebrate Transportation Day in the Commonwealth, so hope you'll all join me in celebrating VRE and our other public transportation modes. And with that, I think our next Operations Board meeting will be held on June 25th. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So move, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. And sorry, a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 I can't imagine anyone would be opposed, but any opposed? Or any abstentions? The meeting is adjourned. See you all next month.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Has left the meeting.